Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. Thank you so much for waiting here for us as we had dropped a message to all of you here and on our Telegram channel that today's session will be delayed by a few minutes due to some logistical issues. Thank you so much for waiting in. Now it is time once again to bring back the live Hindu Newspaper Analysis session. Good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine, and I hope that all of you utilize this time to ask each other very interesting questions, as I can also see in the chat. Before we begin today's session, a couple of very important announcements. First, on 13th of May, this Saturday at 6 p.m., we have an extremely important workshop for all of you, specially designed for those who are planning for the 2024 attempt. In this workshop, we'll be discussing the best way to plan for the next upcoming year and to ensure that you ace the 2024 attempt. If you're one of those who are preparing for 2024 or even an year after that, don't forget to join us for this workshop. All that you have to do is use the link given in the description of the video, click on that link and register for this workshop. This is absolutely free of cost, no charges. Also, by coming to these workshops, you will be able to ask a lot of your questions to the faculty, to the experts, and get all your doubts cleared. Don't forget to join here as well. Please remember, this workshop will be exclusively on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, so you have to join us there. It won't be here on YouTube. Also, today's session at 7:30 p.m. is again on government schemes. This is the second session on the government schemes. Glad to see many of you joined yesterday as well. Make sure that you give final touches to your preparation by joining us on all these sessions. This is a part of our Target Prelims 2023 series, where we have been discussing the most important current affairs of the last 1 year or so. This is the schedule. This is where we are now. We have 3 more classes to go. Just in case you could not attend any of the session of this series earlier, you can find those sessions on our YouTube channel. You can search for the playlist of the Target Prelims 2023. Whichever session you missed, please make sure that you attend those sessions. Those are extremely important for you. We have discussed important news stories from the MCQ point of view. Now let's come back to where we were. These are the important topics that we have. We will be starting our discussion with India's role in the multi-aligned world. More importantly, India's role specifically in the ongoing Ukraine-Russia war. What is China doing? What can India do? Then the Supreme Court ruling on the Sena issue that came out yesterday. Then the US debt ceiling. It is in the news that the US government has once again hit its debt ceiling. What exactly is that? What is the implication? Fourth topic, Supreme Court again gave a very important judgment about Delhi government versus Lieutenant Governor. And then from the prelims point of view, WHO has announced that Mpox is no longer a global health emergency. So these are topics that we'll be discussing. Also, today I would also like to remind you, just in case you are not a part of our Telegram channel, please make sure you join that, because you get a lot of important updates on our Telegram channel. Also, as you know, for example, today the session got a bit delayed. All those who are a part of the Telegram channel got to know, because on our Telegram channel we had sent a message that this session will be delayed by a few minutes today. So all those who are already on the channel got to know this, so they were well prepared. I would advise you also to make sure to join that channel. The link for our Telegram channel also is in the description of the video. As you know, every day after this CNA session, we also have a live quiz on our Telegram channel based on the topics that we discuss. So don't forget to join there as well. Now let's begin with the very first article that we have. The first article is about India's multi-aligned stand. Now, let's try and understand something. You all know that India, since our independence, has been following the policy of non-alignment, right? India is a non-aligned nation. India, in fact, is one of the founding members of non-aligned movement. Non-alignment in simple terms means that India decided after the World War II ended, India will not take any side. When the entire world was divided between USA and USSR, India decided that we will be non-aligned. Rather than choosing any of the two sides, we will remain neutral. However, what has happened is, now in the past few years, we have seen a very important change in India's policy. India is still a non-aligned country only. Officially, we are not something that is not non-aligned. However, the difference is now India is trying to become a part of a lot of different groups. Have you realized this? In the past few years, Can you give me some examples of different groups where India has gained membership in the past few years? There are a lot of different groups where we have become part. And not just different groups, even the free trade agreements. Earlier, India did not used to sign a lot of free trade agreements, and now you see, we are trying to sign a lot of free trade agreements. Yes, so there are a lot of these groups, and many of you are giving answers as well. Quad, SCO, I2U2, the answer that I see. BIMSTEC, we were members much earlier as well. Kishan, ICET is just India, USA. Apart from this also, let's look at MTCR, for example, Missile Technology Control Regime, India is a member. There are others as well, Wassenaar Arrangement, again India is a member. Australia Group, India is a member. So India is, as you can see, trying to become a member to a lot of these important groups. Earlier, we were not a member of a lot of these groups, but now that has changed. Apart from this, if you see free trade agreements also, India is now signing a lot of free trade agreements. We signed one recently with UAE. We signed one with Australia as well. You know, we are in talks right now to sign a free trade agreement with UK. With EU also, we are trying to sign a free trade agreement. So what does this show? This shows that India, from being a non-aligned country, is now moving towards multi-alignment. Multi-alignment means, rather than thinking that, no, we will not join any group. Now we are of this view that we should join a lot more groups. So India is now entering a multi-aligned kind of a policy. However, multi-alignment has its own pros and its cons. For example, ever since the Ukraine-Russia war has started, you all know, many countries have been saying that India can mediate between the two. Why? Because India is one of the few countries that is in good contact with both. India right now is still maintaining contact with both Ukraine and Russia. Not many countries can claim this. And when it comes to mediator, when it comes to a country that can mediate, it can only be that country which has good relationship with both. And India is one of those. So we thought that India would actually become this power that will be able to mediate. However, this is not what is happening. This is not what is happening. The reality is, India thought that India would be asked to mediate, or India thought that India would be actually the country that will be seen as a power center. But what is happening is, it is actually China that is taking this role and not India. If you see, China right now is trying to mediate between the two sides. China is an extremely close friend of Russia right now, as you all know. China, in fact, Russia-China friendship was just recently said to be at the best ever stage. It's a friendship where the two countries have come very close to each other. On the other hand, Xi Jinping has even talked to Vladimir Zelensky, that is the Ukraine president. Ukraine also wants China to come in and mediate. You also would have seen, and we have discussed this in earlier CNAs as well. Remember, China also mediated a peace deal between which two countries in West Asia? Iran and Saudi Arabia, remember? So China right now is increasing its global stature. Why? Number one, China is trying to mediate between these two countries, Russia and Ukraine. On the other hand, China is also trying, or has just ensured a peace deal between these. Now, what does it mean? What it means is, China is projecting itself as the real superpower, which India was hoping that we will do. India was hoping that when we call ourselves Vishwa Guru, India was hoping that we will be the one who would be ensuring that the global issues are resolved. But rather than India, it is actually China that is doing it. So it is a kind of a warning sign for India. Very recently, Ukraine's deputy foreign minister was in India. She said a very, very important thing. Listen to what she said. She said, India wants to be the Vishwa Guru, the global teacher and arbiter. In our case, we have got a very clear picture. Aggressor against innocent victim. Supporting Ukraine is the only right choice for the true Vishwa Guru. This is called being held accountable. Ukraine is trying to hold India accountable. Why? Ukraine is saying that if you call yourself as the Vishwa Guru, then please act as a Vishwa Guru. Take side of a country that has been attacked. However, India cannot do that because, you know, our dependence on Russia is a lot more as compared to our dependence on Ukraine. Apart from the oil that we are taking from Russia at a cheaper price, Even today, a lot of our defense equipment and their spare parts are dependent on Russia. The one problem that India has is, India has a lot of soft power, right? We all keep on talking about this. India has a lot of soft power. But the reality is, India doesn't have a lot of hard power. There's a difference between the two. Please understand the difference. Hard power means when you actually can impact a country by use of military, or when you can impact a country by the use of money. China, for example, has a lot of hard power right now. China has huge trades with a lot of these countries around the world. China can impact a lot of these countries due to their trade, which India cannot do. India, on the other hand, uses soft power. Soft power means trying to influence other countries not by using force or money, etc. Influencing other countries by offering them other things. For example, we offer a lot of countries that we will give scholarships to your students, we will set up hospitals in your area, we will help you with agriculture, technology, etc. That is what soft power is. But the problem is, when you are resolving these disputes like a war, you need hard power. You need the countries to listen to you, otherwise they would regret this, that they did not listen. Recently, even the RSS chief, that is Mohan Bhagwat, said that India lacks hard power. So it's not just the opposition members from the Congress or other parties that say that India doesn't have the hard power that is required. Even the RSS chief, the supporter of the BJP, even they have said that India doesn't have enough hard powers right now. Now, for India, what we have done is, although we keep on saying that we are in touch with both the sides, although we keep on saying that we want the war to end, but even then the reality is, whenever there has been a UN resolution against Russia, we have abstained from voting. All of you would know this. Ever since the Ukraine-Russia war started, there have been multiple resolutions introduced in UN, UNHRC against Russia, and India has abstained from voting on all of those. India has abstained from voting. India has said that no, we will not vote against them. This again shows that India's position is more evasive, meaning that we don't want to go deep into all these issues. Now, this might harm India in the long run, because you have to understand, if you are aspiring to become a Vishwa Guru or a superpower, you can't sit on the sidelines. Sitting on the sidelines means that we will not take a call, let the matter go, and then we will decide what to do. But if you have to really become a Vishwa Guru like India is, India has to take a call. Now, I also wanted to discuss what is the interest of China right now. Why are they mediating? Why did they mediate in Iran and Saudi Arabia? Why are they trying to mediate between Ukraine and Russia? What is it that China would have to gain from it? First, understand this. China is aspiring to become a global superpower, replacing US. China also realizes that if you really have to become a global power, you can only do that while you ensure that you are able to resolve global disputes. Only superpowers can do that. For example, a lot of Middle East disputes, West Asia disputes have been resolved by US mediation. There is the Abraham Accord that all of you know, Abraham Accord, with which Israel's relations with most of the Arab countries became better, including UAE, etc. China is also trying to prove that they are not just an economic power. It's not that China only has trading power. It's not that they just have manufacturing prowess. China also wants to prove that they can resolve these disputes around the world. So the countries should come to them. Also, China right now knows, because they have so much trade with each and every country around the world, their voice will be heard by everyone no matter what. That is why Iran and Saudi Arabia listen to China. Do you know why? Because you would know Iran and China have signed a $400 billion deal, where China has told Iran that don't worry, we will buy your oil and we will invest $400 billion in your country. With Saudi Arabia also, China is doing the same. China is saying to Saudi Arabia, don't depend on US. We will give you whatever weapons you want. We will give you whatever money you want. You bring a partnership with us. So when China has influence over all these countries then listen to China. This is what is happening between Ukraine and Russia as well. Both Ukraine and Russia, if you look at them individually, both of their largest trading partner is China only. So China is the largest trading partner of both. That is why both Ukraine and Russia know that China would be a good country to actually resolve this issue. Right now, China and Russia are very close, and this relationship is very interesting. Do you know Russia and China have been very old partners? These were the two original communist countries in the world. When you saw Second World War, after that when communism was starting to spread, the two big communist countries in the world were China and Russia. So they were always close and they were always combined due to their ideology. However, the difference was if you go 15 years back, between China and Russia, the Russian government was like a big brother. Russia was like the more powerful country and China was like a younger brother. They used to listen. Now the tables have turned. Now China is the big brother. They are the ones who are more powerful. Russia requires China much more than what China requires Russia. China is buying Russian oil much more than India. Do you know that? We see and read about India buying Russian oil, but it's actually China that is buying a whole lot of Russian oil as compared to what India is doing. Recently, Chinese foreign minister even offered that we would like to negotiate between Israel and Palestine as well. So China's prowess, China's power is increasing not just in our neighborhood, but also around the world. Now that may be kind of a warning sign for India. Warning sign why? Because see, as more and more countries become friends of China, as more and more countries are willing to sign a contract negotiated by China, that means if India wants to take up an issue against China, very few countries will actually support us. This is the problem for India. Because for other countries, they don't have a border dispute with China. So they will not listen to us when we say China is interfering in our border. We have a border dispute with the Chinese. So our situation with China is very different as compared to the other countries around the world. And this is where it's a very tricky situation for India. Tricky in the sense that we would want that Ukraine-Russia war should stop. But the only country that is now willing to stop that or willing to mediate is China. But we don't want China to do that. Do you see what dilemma India is in? We want the war to stop, but we don't want China to stop it. Similarly, we want peace in the world, but we don't want China to be the messenger of that peace. Because we know that in reality, they are not really a peaceful country. This is the problem that India has right now. There are a few graphs that I wanted to show you. First graph, which shows how China's trade with Russia is increasing. You can see this 2022, how China-Russia trade has increased considerably. This is extremely important for Russia specifically. At a time when Russia is facing sanctions from most countries, including US, when Russia is not able to sell their products, oil, fuel to Europe, China has come in as a big alternative. China is buying all that oil, etc. from Russia. So Russia is happy with that. Second, Russia's biggest export destination. If you see, yes, Russia is exporting a lot of oil to India, that is fine, but it is actually China to which Russia's oil is going in large numbers. So it's not just India. If you see this graph, over double of India's oil is being supplied from China, from Russia to China. So it is actually China that is taking the biggest advantage of Russian oil available at a cheaper price as compared to the market. This is also a very, very important graph. This was our first topic for the day. Before we go on to the second one, the Supreme Court judgment in the Sena case, let me take up a few questions very quickly. Ashish Sen, do you agree rather than focusing on mediating policy, India's first priority should be financially? Ashish, see, no country can say that I will only focus on one thing. So yes, having financial independence, having a strong financial capability is always a top priority for any country. It's not just India. But then at the same time, you have to ensure that you can only grow financially when you can trade with other countries. Trading will only happen when there is peace in the world. So all these are connected to each other. Then Kishan is saying, oh sorry, your question got hidden. Okay, is this not like how British was mediating and their legacy was come up in the form of colony? It's not like the British mediation was very different. British mediation was done because of the reason that British had all these countries as their colony. So British were mediating from that point of view. They were mediating more from the point of view of guilt, that we are guilty, that you are ruling over it. China is doing it thinking about the future, that we would be able to ensure that their economic prowess or their superpower expands around the world. I don't have any coffee with me, so I'm not sure how will I take coffee in between. Okay, then I have a question. Kumkum is saying, now India is the largest country to sell refined oil to Europe, but not China is at the top. No. Who told you India is the largest country to sell refined oil to Europe? That is not true. China also sells huge amounts of refined oil to Europe. Refined oil is, again, refined oil means oil, the crude oil that has been refined by the refineries. It's not just India. Just that because we are in India, our news channels, our newspapers focus more on India. We don't focus a lot on China, but China is trading much more as compared to us right now. Ashwini is saying, can you explain what Russia wants from Ukraine in a simple way? There are a lot of interesting issues that are happening between Ukraine and Russia. The war started because Ukraine wanted to become a part of NATO. Russia did not want a NATO country as its neighbor. Then Russia also says that Ukraine, a Ukrainian government, has been exploiting their own Russian minority population. So there is a minority population in Ukraine that speaks Russian, it's of Russian origin. Russia says that Ukraine is exploiting those people, so we are taking revenge. All these factors are coming in. Then Akshat is saying, why India doesn't buy oil from China? Because China is not a producer of oil. Why would we buy oil from China? It's like saying, why don't you buy cars from Bangladesh? Why don't you buy air conditioners from Bangladesh? Because they don't make it. As simple as that. We will buy oil from a country that makes it, right? So China also buys oil from some other country. How can we buy it from China? And why would we buy it from China? Then, okay, I'll take one last question before we go ahead. Why China is not trying India to make its supporter than US? I am not sure what your question is. Maybe you'll have to frame it again. I'm not sure what your question is. You have to frame it again. Okay. Then I'll take one or two more. How India can overcome China in the sector of influencing other countries through various ways. You might not like my answer, but my answer is that I don't think India can overcome China in influencing other countries. It's not that easy. We all want, ideally, that India should be the most powerful, the most influential country, but that is not really what happens. I have given this example earlier as well. I'll give this example once again. Just imagine there are two relatives that come to your house. One relative comes, every time the relative comes, before going back, they give you 2,000 rupees. Then the other relative comes, who comes in, who talks to you, plays with you, but leaves without giving you any money. Which relative would you want to visit your house time and time again? The first one who gives you money, right? China is that relative. So China has a lot more money power to support and to influence other countries as compared to India. As simple as that. Okay, chalo, let's go ahead then. The second article that we have here is about the Supreme Court ruling on the Shiv Sena issue. Now, as you know, and we have discussed this earlier as well, Shiv Sena got split. The ruling party, that is original Shiv Sena, many of their MLAs said that we will not be a part of this party, we are forming our other party. That was led by Eknath Shinde. Then Uddhav Thackeray, who was the Maharashtra Chief Minister, he had to resign. The governor of Maharashtra had asked him to prove if majority of MLAs still support him, he can run the government. But rather than proving that majority of MLAs still support him, he resigned. So ever since then, in Maharashtra, the Eknath Shinde government is ruling over. Now, the case in Supreme Court was simple. The case in Supreme Court was Uddhav Thackeray, who was the Maharashtra Chief Minister earlier, he was saying that it was illegal to remove my government, and he wanted Supreme Court to reinstate his government. He wanted Supreme Court to announce that he will be back as a Chief Minister. That was his expectation. But in reality, no one expected that something like this would happen. Supreme Court said that number one, Governor of Maharashtra was wrong in asking the Chief Minister to prove his majority through a floor test. Again, remember, the Supreme Court has said that the Governor of Maharashtra, Mr. Bhagat Singh Koshyari, was wrong in asking for a floor test or a trust vote. There was no reason to ask the Chief Minister to again prove his majority. However, even though the Chief Minister was asked to prove his majority, why did the Chief Minister resign? Because the Chief Minister resigned, without proving his majority, Supreme Court says that is why we cannot reinstate the old government. If Uddhav Thackeray would have proved that he still has the majority and then he would have resigned, or then the new chief minister would have been appointed, then Supreme Court might have called him back. But because he has resigned without even proving his majority, that is why the Supreme Court says we cannot reinstate the government. You could have proved that you have the majority, then we might have called you back, but not right now. The Supreme Court also said that when it comes to anti-defection law, Supreme Court said that we will not interfere. Under anti-defection law, when a member of legislature has to be disqualified, it has to be by the speaker only. Because in this case, again, it was a very complicated issue in Maharashtra. Because a lot of people from the original Shiv Sena left the party, they said we are going away, we are going to the other party. Uddhav Thackeray wanted all these MLAs to be disqualified by the speaker. Speaker himself joined the other group. So the Uddhav Thackeray group wanted Shiv Sena to disqualify a lot of MLAs. Shiv Sena said that no, we will not do that. It is the speaker only that has to decide on the disqualification within a reasonable time. After speaker has decided, then if you want to challenge, then you come to Supreme Court. This is what the court had said, that if you want, you can actually wait for the speaker's decision, then you are not happy, then you come to Supreme Court, but right now we will not decide. There was one more argument which had to be decided. That argument was about the whip. Please understand this. This argument was about the whip. Now what is a whip? Whip is a party officer who has the responsibility to communicate to all the party members. For example, let's say BJP has appointed someone as a whip. That BJP member will tell all the BJP MPs that tomorrow a bill is being introduced in the parliament, all of you would have to be present, all of you would have to vote yes. If you don't vote yes, or if you are absent, then there will be action taken against you. This is called a whip. So whip again is an authority appointed by a political party, wherein the whip will decide, or whip will spread the message of the party to all the members. This is a whip. Now, the issue here in case of Shiv Sena was that Shiv Sena had two whips. One whip of the Shiv Sena was appointed by the party of Shiv Sena, that is the political party. The chairman of the party, leader of the party had appointed a whip. On the other hand, what happened was that the party MLAs of Shiv Sena, they also appointed their own whip. So Shiv Sena had two whips. One person who was appointed by the party, by Shiv Sena. Other whip was appointed by those MLAs of Shiv Sena who had been elected. So there was a whip from the political party side, and then there was a whip from the legislature party. Legislature party means those who are MLAs, those who are elected MLAs. The question also was, which of these two whips would be the official whip? Means, who has the power to appoint a whip? Is it the party who has the power to appoint the whip, or is it the legislature? Is it those members of the party that have been appointed? I'll give you a simple example. Let's take the example of BJP right now. In BJP, who will decide the whip? Will the party head, that is, let's say Mr. JP Nadda, he will decide who is the whip of BJP, or the BJP MPs in the parliament will decide who is the whip? That also was a big question. Supreme Court said that the whip will be decided by the political party. Supreme Court said that whip will only be decided by the political party and not by the legislature. Whatever the political party says, that will be final. Why? Because those who won their election, this is what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court said those who won their election won because of the support from their political party. The political party held them with funds, political party workers held them fight the elections, only then they could win the elections. So after winning the elections, the MLAs can't say that now we are separate. That is why the whip also has to be appointed by the political party. This is what was said here by the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court had to decide about the floor test. What exactly is a floor test? Floor test means in the legislature, in the lower house, the party in power has to prove their majority, or whichever party is laying a claim that we want to form the government, they have to prove the majority. This test of majority is called the floor test. Under Article 163 of the Constitution, Governor can request the Chief Minister to prove his majority in the House. Even when it is not in session, the session can be called to have a floor test. It is to determine whether the ruling party actually has the majority or not. Now, the issue here is, when you talk about a floor test, the Supreme Court in this case, for example, said that the governor of Maharashtra had no reason to call a floor test. The government was running properly. There was no issue in the government. Also, the legislature was not in the session. This is why the governor of Maharashtra, what he did was wrong. However, even then, the Supreme Court said we can't bring back the government. Why? Because Uddhav Thackeray resigned before proving the majority. If the majority would have been proven, then maybe they would have called them back. There are multiple ways to prove your majority. There is a ballot vote where you vote in the ballot. There's a voice vote. There's a division vote. Division vote means you have kind of EVM machines kind of thing on the chair of every member of parliament. They'll just press the button. That is called division vote. Ballot vote is when you vote in the ballot, and voice vote is you just speak. The speaker will say, okay, those who are in favor say aye, those who are against say no. This is how usually the voice vote is conducted. This was our second article about the Supreme Court ruling on Shiv Sena. Let me take up a few other comments before we go ahead. Ashu is saying, is floor test under discretionary power of governor? Yes, because just imagine, how can the governor ask the chief minister, do you want to have a floor test or not? Right? Yes, so that is why it is under discretionary powers only. Pallavi, no, the provision of whip is not mentioned in the constitution. Then I have a question. Why India recognizes one China policy? It's a good question. This has been see, what happens is, when you yourself have a territorial dispute within your country, as in India, when India has a territorial dispute within their own country, then as a country you are very careful what policy to have with other countries. So we know that if, for example, with China we start saying that no, Taiwan is a separate country altogether, then China can also start putting much more pressure on India. I'll give you one more example. The other example you can take is of Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka had this major civil war. There have been multiple resolutions passed against Sri Lanka in the UN Human Rights Council. The resolution about whether there should be an international team that should go to Sri Lanka to investigate the case. India usually always votes against that. We don't want an international team to go to Sri Lanka to collect evidences for civil war. Why? Because we think that if the same comes here, if the same comes on India, that international team is coming to India, some state of India, to investigate human rights violations, India doesn't want that. So it's more of that. It's not really to do with we liking them or not. It's more about we don't want those countries to do this to us, so we also don't want to do this to them. Then Kancha is saying, that is that an MLA is not superior than the party. No. Again, see, understand this. Whatever the Supreme Court says, let's not add something to it. Supreme Court never said MLA is not superior than the party. Supreme Court talked about the whip, full stop. So let's not think that, oh, because whip is like this, so this will be happening, this will be happening. This is not maths. So let's not take this equation forward. Because of this will happen, because of this will happen. Whatever the Supreme Court said, just remember that much. Don't go ahead of that. Then I have a question. Rohit saying string of pearls. Rohit, string of pearls is what India says is a Chinese policy. China never accepts that. String of pearls means, if let's say this is India's southern border, India believes that China is investing in ports to surround India. So there is a port here in Bangladesh, there is Myanmar, there is a port here in Sri Lanka, then they have a port in Maldives, they have a port here in, let's say, Oman also, they have a port here as well in Djibouti, they have a port in Pakistan as well. So India thinks that China is surrounding us with these ports. This is what is called string of pearls. This is string of pearls. Remember, India only says that they are following the string of pearls policy. China never says that they are doing the string of pearls policy. Okay. Okay. One last question Govardhanam is saying, Uddhav Thackeray resigned because of pressure, political situation. Earlier, Supreme Court allowed floor test again and said governor is illegal. Why Supreme Court can't use Article 142 to reinstate Uddhav Thackeray? Because it's not that easy. So again, reinstating a government after government has been gone for many months and a new government has come in, that is not something that you would want. Yes, Supreme Court has powers under Article 142. Why they did not use that power, only they can tell. So I can't tell on behalf of Supreme Court why they did not use Article 142 power. That is something that they will tell you. However, on the other hand, no one expected this would happen. The case is very simple. If Uddhav Thackeray, let's assume, did have the majority, then how is it that a new government has been formed? As simple as that. How is it that a new government has been formed? The new government has been formed because MLAs from Uddhav Thackeray came here and went to that side. So this was not logical anyway. Govardhanam, you can stop copy pasting it again. I already answered your question. Okay, let's move ahead then. The third article that we want to discuss is from America. America has once again hit its debt ceiling. What exactly is debt ceiling? How does it work? Let's try and understand this. India doesn't have anything like that. US has this law called the debt ceiling law. Now please understand what is this. The history basically goes back to World War I. Now as you know, in India, whenever the government has to spend any money, they have to go to parliament, get the money bill passed, get the appropriation bill passed, only then the money can be taken and money can be spent, right? That is what happens in India. So in India, government cannot keep on taking debt without asking for parliament's permission, right? Government has to take the permission of the parliament for each and every money spent, even 1 single rupee. In USA, the history is during World War I, because the American president, that is Woodrow Wilson at that time, because Woodrow Wilson at World War I wanted or needed a lot of money to be spent, the government could not go back to the parliament time and time again, that is their Congress. So American president could not go back to their Congress time and time again and ask for permission to spend more money. So what happened was, US Congress gave power to the US president to spend money in a certain limit without asking the parliament. Let me repeat again, listen to this carefully. Because in World War I, the president of US had to go back to the government time and time again to ask for money. US government decided, US parliament in fact decided, we will give the power to president to spend money till a certain limit without asking the parliament. That is called the debt limit. This is the debt limit. That is, this is the amount of debt that the president can take by themselves without referring to the Congress. This is called the debt limit. Now debt limit obviously, as you can imagine, has been increased time and time again. Now the debt limit is extremely high. The debt limit that we have right now is $31.4 trillion. The current debt limit is this, that US government can take this much debt, not more than this. If they have to go over, and the problem is they have reached that limit now. America has reached that limit now. So now if they have to go beyond that, what do you have to do? You have to go to US Congress once again. Only the US Congress can now increase the debt limit. So US is facing that problem right now, that they have this issue where they have already reached their debt limit. Debt limit, as I said, started in the First World War. At that time, when the debt limit started, it used to be $11.5 billion at the time of Woodrow Wilson. Then it got increased time and time again whenever the situation arises. The government of US has reached the debt limit multiple times. Whenever it happens, they usually increase it in the parliament. Right now, the debt ceiling has been reached. Now, what will happen now? There are different options that you have. Now, listen to this. First option that the US government has obviously is stop spending lesser money. Because when you spend more money than what you're earning, you will be in debt, as simple as that. So if you have to reduce your debt, first option, don't spend money. When the US government stops spending more money, what will happen? Medicare, like the medical insurance that citizens of US get, that will cut short. Subsidies given by the US government, that will cut short. Infrastructure projects by US government, that will reduce spending. green energy transition in US, that will reduce spending. So that is one option. That you cut down all your different types of spending, that will be good. If you can't do that, because doing that means people will not vote for you, right? No person in the country will vote for a government that is cutting down spending, because cutting down spending impacts everyone. Everyone wants government to spend more money so that they can get more money from the market. What is the second option? Second option is to ask Congress to increase debt limit. Second option is ask the Congress to increase debt limit. Now this is where the problem starts. The problem here is US has a very unique kind of a political system. Yes, they have Democrats and they have Republicans, that is fine. But the problem here is US does not have an anti-defection law. US doesn't have an anti-defection law. Now what does it mean? It means that even the members of the ruling party, let's say members of parliament who are Democrats, they can also vote against their own government's law. So if, let's say, Joe Biden right now introduces a bill or wants to introduce a bill under which he wants to increase the debt ceiling, right? It is not guaranteed that his own party members will vote for it, because that doesn't exist in US. Party members can vote in whatever way that they want. That is why what happens is, in such cases, Democrat MPs, that is MPs of your own party, they start negotiating with the president. What do they tell the president? They tell the president, give more budget to my city, build a hospital in my city, and only then I will vote for you. Or introduce this new scheme in my constituency, only then I will vote for my own party. That is what happens in US. So in US, increasing debt ceiling or passing any bill is not that easy, because you don't know if your own members actually will vote for you or not, because they don't have an anti-defection law. Why don't they have an anti-defection law unlike India? See, the difference is, in India, if the members of parliament change their side, let's say if today, just imagine if today 100 members of the BJP vote in favor of Congress, what will happen? The government will fall down. That is why we have an anti-defection law. In US, government doesn't fall down. Why? Because president is independent of the parliament in US. In the parliament, even if all the Democrat members of parliament vote in favor of Republican, nothing will happen. President will stay as it is, because president is elected separately, parliament is elected separately. So they have much more stability. That is why they don't follow anti-defection law. So in US, it's much trickier how to increase the debt ceiling. First problem is from the Republicans, that is the opposition parties. Opposition parties, Republicans, are anyways against president. Why? They don't want their president to spend money on green energy. They don't want president to spend money on all these climate change activities. They don't believe in this. Republicans want more money to be spent on oil, gas. They don't want renewable energy, etc. So they want to anyways cut down subsidies on renewable energy. So it's not that easy how the debt limit will be increased. As you can see here, the amount of debt that America has continuously increased with every president. No president can say that, oh, I did not spend a lot of money. With COVID-19 crisis, it's increased even more. It is still increasing right now because US is spending a lot more money. This is a US debt ceiling, as you can read. As I said, debt is the same everywhere. The simple definition of debt is when you spend more than what you earn. So when you are spending more, you are borrowing more, then you're earning money. That is where you would have to be within the limit. Remember, most other countries don't have this kind of a limit, debt ceiling limit. Apart from US, one other country that has this kind of a limit is Denmark. Remember, US and Denmark are the two countries that have put this debt ceiling limit. Other countries don't have this limit, like India doesn't have this limit. For example, in India, we do have a law under which the government has to control their fiscal deficit. That is fine. But the 3% fiscal deficit limit that has been given to us, it's not mandatory that if the government goes beyond that, something will happen. No. In India, government is given a fiscal deficit target, but it's more of a suggestion. It's nothing that something other will happen, or government will go to jail, government will fall down. Nothing like that will happen. But in US, government is not allowed to go over that limit. That is the law. That is the difference between them. Also, as you can see, This blue line tells you the debt limit and red line tells you what debt has been taken. So debt limit has been breached here. Why? Because the government passed a law that we needed to do that. This was a time when they were undergoing a recession. This was a time when COVID-19 crisis was going on. So there have been couple of times that they have gone above the debt ceiling limit, but that is because the Parliament of US allowed them to do that. Otherwise, they have not or they cannot go above the debt ceiling limit. That was our third topic for the day. Before I take on the next mains article, before I do that, let me quickly take a few questions. Akansha is saying it's not in the topic, but can you give me some picture of India-Africa economic relations? We are trying to improve our relationship with Africa since Africa remains a continent with a lot of resources. The problem is we are facing a lot more challenge from China, US, Japan, all these countries are trying to invest a lot in Africa. The good part that India has is India has a good relation with a lot of African countries. We have been offering them a lot of things like scholarships, technology, etc. We are running exchange programs as well. India also has the India-Africa Summit. These summits are where all the African leaders are invited. So we do have relationship, but again, nothing as compared to China. I'll give you one more example. A lot of Indian companies, for example, have a lot of business in China, in Africa. Airtel, for example, Airtel is one of the largest telecom companies in Africa. Bajaj sells a lot of bikes in Africa. So there is a big connection between the two, but again, as compared to China, we are nowhere near the investment that they have done in Africa. Many African countries are running on Chinese money right now. No, Irana, as I said, India doesn't have a debt ceiling limit. USA has that, Denmark has that, we don't. We have a fiscal deficit, kind of a suggestion, it should be 3%, but not more than that. Kishan is saying, do you think debt limitation is good? Yes, debt limitation is good because you have to understand in case of US, what is debt limitation? Debt limitation is how much the government can take debt without asking the parliament. So if you actually try and see by this definition, how much the government can take debt without asking the parliament, in India's case, in that case, debt limit is 0. If you have to actually compare, then you can say in India, the debt ceiling is 0. Why? Because how much money can our government borrow from market without asking the parliament? 0. Because we don't allow that. USA allows that the government can take debt without asking the parliament also, but you have to stay till that limit, $31.4 trillion. So in that case, you can say India has a 0 debt limit. It is good because again, you can't give executive unlimited powers to have all this. As I have said 7 times, let me say it the 8th time also now, India does not have a debt ceiling law. Okay, let me not repeat it the 9th time now. Suresh is asking from where US government borrows money. Suresh, just like every other country, they borrow money from the market. There are many other countries around the world that want to buy US government bonds. So when they buy US government bonds, they give money to US. That is also borrowing. All these are borrowing from the market, from international institutions. That is how they buy it. Kumkum is saying this debt ceiling was started during World War I. Why is it still in use? Why don't they scrap it? Why would they scrap it? It's going fine for them. There's a saying, don't repair if it's not broken, or don't fix what is not broken. So it's not broken. Their system is working fine. If there would have been a situation where the economy would have crumbled because they had a debt ceiling, then maybe. But it's working properly. Let's go ahead then. The next article from the mains point of view is another Supreme Court case that was decided yesterday. It was a case of Delhi government versus the Lieutenant Governor. I am sure by now Supreme Court also has been bored of these cases of Delhi government versus Lieutenant Governor. There have been so many of these cases coming in time and time again. In simple terms, who will have the power? Who exactly will take decisions on most of the matters in Delhi? In this case, the question was on services. Meaning that the bureaucrats who are working in Delhi, for example, they will work under whose control? If a bureaucrat has to be transferred, who has to give the order, the Lieutenant Governor or the Chief Minister? Obviously, the central government has been trying to empower the Lieutenant Governor. Central government has been trying to make sure that the Lieutenant Governor has a lot more powers as compared to the Chief Minister. But the government in Delhi wants that they are a democratically elected government. They should be the ones who should take the decision. What did the Supreme Court decide? the same thing that we already know. Supreme Court said that democratically elected government cannot be reduced to zero. Democratically elected government is a powerful government. They should decide on all the services. So administration of services has to be done by Delhi government and not the Lieutenant Governor. There are only three things which are outside the purview of the Lieutenant Governor. That is police, land and public order. So the same things that we knew earlier as well. Just the same things that we knew earlier, just that the central government was trying to change the status quo. Central government was trying to ensure that the Lieutenant Governor appointed by them has a lot more power, but that is not really the case. The question was also about Article 239AA. As you know, this Article 239AA was made a part of Constitution through 69th Amendment Act, which gave special powers to Delhi on recommendation of S. Balakrishnan Committee. I hope all of you know, Delhi did not have a legislature always like it has today. Before 1991, before this amendment came into picture, Delhi only had a municipality. Delhi only had a municipality and Delhi was mainly run by the central government. There was no government of Delhi. Government of Delhi is a very recent phenomena. It started in 1990s. Before that, there was nothing like as such Delhi government. This was done through Article 239AA. As we said, the Supreme Court has sided with the state government, the democratically elected government, that their powers cannot be overridden every single time. They do have the powers except in the matters of law and order, land and police. These are the three things on which the Lieutenant Governor will decide. Now, this is an infographic again that encapsulates what happened in the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court said that legislative executive powers over services such as IAS or joint cadre services shall lie with the NCTD. Means National Capital Territory of Delhi. That means the Delhi government. So whenever you say NCTD, that means National Capital Territory of Delhi. These powers have been given to them by the Supreme Court. As you know, such matters have gone to Supreme Court multiple times about Delhi versus Lieutenant Governor or Delhi versus Centre. The story is usually always the same. Centre government trying to capture as much powers with Delhi. The argument of the centre government is that since Delhi is the national capital, the government of India should decide how Delhi should run. The argument that the centre government gives is that the services of Delhi decide the future of the entire country and not just the state of Delhi. So that is the argument that they give. They say that we should be the ones in charge of services because we have to ensure the well-being of Delhi. It's the national capital. But Supreme Court said no. You cannot override a democratically elected government just by saying it's a national capital. If that was the case, why did you provide a government anyway? If that was the case, you should not have provided the government of Delhi anyway. So that is the entire idea. By the way, what do you mean by this phrase, sui generis? What do you mean by this, by the way? And don't Google. What do you mean by this? You might have heard this phrase other places as well. For example, you might have heard this phrase when you talk about India's federalism, that India's federalism is sui generis. What is this? Yes, sui generis means of its own kind, means it's not the same anywhere else. It means of its own kind, meaning that you can't compare it with anyone. So for example, Delhi has a sui generis status, means Delhi's status is not the same as any other union territory. So you cannot compare it. Similarly, we usually say India's federalism is sui generis. So India's federal structure can't be compared to any other country as such. That is called sui generis. So that is how we use this. Okay, I'll give you one homework before I go on to the prelim specific news. We have only one of this news. I'll give you one homework. Just you have to tell me in the comment section after the video ends. Just like Delhi cannot make laws on land, police and public order. Listen to this. Just like Delhi cannot make laws on land, police and public order, what is the status of Jammu Kashmir legislature? Jammu Kashmir legislature and Puducherry legislature. What do you think can the Puducherry legislature do? Can they also not make laws on the same things? Or for them, are there different subjects on which they cannot make law? I'll repeat. My question is, Delhi cannot make laws on land, police, public order. But what is it that Jammu Kashmir or Puducherry cannot make laws on? What are their subjects? Are they the same or are they slightly different? Think about that and tell me in the comment section after the video ends. Let's go ahead. The next article is from the prelims point of view. The WHO has announced that monkeypox or Mpox is no longer a global health emergency. This is just a few days after COVID also was announced as not a health emergency anymore. It went on for about 1 year. Global health emergency status basically means WHO gives a kind of a warning to nations around the world that this disease is spreading at a fast pace. Please invest more money in medicines, vaccines, etc. So global health emergency is kind of an indication or it kind of a suggestion given to the governments across the world to spend money, research on vaccine, medicine, be prepared for this kind of a problem. This status was given for monkeypox. It's a viral disease. Now, since all these kind of cases have come down, what the government has done is government has now WHO has now removed this notification. They have said that monkeypox is not a global health emergency anymore. There, as you know, in the last 1 year or so, there have been a lot of these cases of monkeypox. In July 2022, it became a global public health emergency. About 90% of these cases were reported in the past 3 months. However, 90% lesser cases were reported in the past 3 months. That is why now the WHO has said that there is no need to have this disease in the public health emergency list. This is again just an indication to the countries around the world. If a disease becomes a global health emergency, there is a suggestion that you should invest more money, you should have more research and medicines ready for this kind of a disease. There are a few things that you should know about monkeypox. It's a viral zoonosis disease, means it's a viral disease that spreads from the animals to the humans. Many humans have been affected by it. It is mostly related to the rainforest area of Central and West Africa and found in some other parts as well. Recently, there were cases in Australia, Israel, and in Europe as well. It's transmitted to humans through close contact with an infected human or an animal. Do remember about this. Disease-based questions are also asked very, very, very regularly. This is how monkeypox spreads. It's usually spread through rodents, or if they bite you, they scratch you, or consumption of certain kind of food products. And if you are in close contact with a human being that has the same disease, you might also get it. These were the articles that we had for you today. This brings us to the end of today's discussion. These are a couple of practice questions I would like all of you to practice, write an answer to. As I said earlier, I would like all of you to join our Telegram channel if you have not done so till now. Use the link given in the description of the video to join the channel. As soon as the session ends, every single day we have a quiz on the Telegram channel. So go over to the Telegram channel, make sure that you attend that quiz, make sure that you revise whatever you have studied today. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Jai Hind.